Now I don't lie you. When I see this Albia State, this Albia where I dey, Albia State. You know, we don't compare this state with any other state. You don't even pass the level of comparison to the compare am with every other state in Nigeria here. If you want to compare Albia State with Dubai. Because Albia State, they compete having a competition. They compete with Dubai. They don't even come up for Nigeria. Albia State right now, you don't come up for Nigeria stuff. They compete with Dubai, with international. And they tell you, as the Albia State right now, no day 2026. So yes, Albia State right now, day 3078. Albia State right now, day future. Steady light everywhere, road clean, everywhere good. Economy, the environment calm. Nonsense, Lagos State and Ogun State. Now overhype, now I go kill Lagos State. And the nonsense state. Go Lagos State, everywhere they spend, they die. Go their market, where they call them, Lagos Island market, go there, see as everywhere rough. Market way big, one of the biggest markets in Lagos State, now that Lagos Island. See as everywhere they smell. Go see the tea, go see this thing. And now this Lagos, Alimojiri well for Lagos. Albia State here, since I know the worker, I never jam one Alimojiri. All those Alabama Musa, Bambia, I never jam one of them like this. Alimojiri full Lagos, me. Come see Albia State. Come see road, they okay. The ties everywhere. It clean. Their market, as big as the market big, so big. It's going clean. See road, see everywhere. Steady light. Oh, we not even talk about that light. Steady light day 247. 247 steady light day. Imagine. And as for Dapo Abiodun, governor of Ogun State, go check your places. Ijebu Ode, Sango, everywhere, road bad. No road, everywhere just dey mele for there. They do nonsense thing, and I don't they go to 8 years. So will you Dapo Abiodun? But I don't go, I don't they do 8 years for there. Not you, I don't achieve. So will you go to carry woman give yansh? Tiwa Savage. You go to carry money, go give yansh. If they carry money, go give yansh, Savage. AKA Tiwa Savage. Money is supposed to use, but they better the life of the Lagosians. Like my brother to use they do nonsense up and down. And the something now the first turn of the issue. See what you don't achieve. I say, as I'm telling you now, Albia day future, the day 2039.
The statement you just heard is striking, emotional, and filled with strong comparisons that immediately capture attention. When someone boldly claims that a particular state does not merely compete with other regions in its own country but instead stands on the same level as global cities like Dubai, it naturally sparks curiosity. It also invites a deeper conversation about perception, development narratives, and how political communication often works in real life. In many parts of the world, enthusiastic praise for a place can reflect genuine pride, but it can also represent a form of rhetorical expression designed to motivate, persuade, or even challenge existing leadership. Before we go further, if you appreciate thoughtful and balanced discussions like this one, remember that subscribing to the channel and sharing your perspective in the comments helps keep these conversations going and helps more people engage with nuanced analysis. Listening carefully to the statement, we can hear a mix of admiration, frustration, and political messaging woven together. The speaker repeatedly highlights what they describe as the exceptional quality of a state referred to as Albia State, presenting it as a place that is clean, organized, illuminated with constant electricity, and calm in its economic environment. The narrative suggests that this state has achieved such a level of development that comparisons with other Nigerian states would not even be appropriate. Instead, the speaker insists that the correct benchmark would be a global hub like Dubai. This kind of comparison is fascinating because it reveals how symbols of modernity travel across borders. Dubai, for instance, has become a global reference point for rapid urban development, modern infrastructure, and futuristic city planning. When people anywhere in the world want to illustrate a vision of advanced development, Dubai often becomes a shorthand example. However, making such comparisons also raises analytical questions. What exactly does it mean for a region to compete with Dubai? Is the comparison referring to infrastructure, governance, economic output, urban cleanliness, tourism potential, or the overall quality of public services? Each of these elements represents a complex set of indicators that urban planners, economists, and policy analysts measure carefully. Development is rarely captured in a single impression or moment of observation. Instead, it involves a long list of measurable variables such as electricity reliability, road networks, sanitation systems, healthcare access, educational institutions, investment climate, and social stability. When we hear statements like the one presented here, it is useful to interpret them not necessarily as precise technical evaluations but as expressions of strong opinion shaped by personal experience. Another interesting aspect of the statement is the repeated emphasis on cleanliness, lighting, and road quality. These are often the most visible indicators of governance because they directly affect everyday life. When people travel from one city to another and notice cleaner streets, brighter public lighting, or smoother roads, the difference can feel dramatic. Urban sociologists sometimes refer to this as perception-driven governance evaluation, meaning that citizens judge public performance largely through what they can see and experience daily. Street lighting, for example, does more than simply illuminate roads at night. It can influence feelings of safety, economic activity, and even the psychological atmosphere of a community. Similarly, clean markets and organized public spaces can create a sense that institutions are functioning effectively. The speaker contrasts Albia State with Lagos State, which is particularly interesting because Lagos is widely known as Nigeria's largest city and economic center. Lagos is a megacity, a place where rapid population growth, intense economic activity, and complex urban challenges intersect. Markets in Lagos are often extremely busy, vibrant, and densely populated. What one observer might interpret as disorder or roughness could also be seen by another observer as the energy of a thriving commercial environment. Markets that are crowded and noisy can actually reflect strong economic participation, where thousands of traders and consumers interact daily. In this sense, perception again becomes crucial. One person might value order and cleanliness above all else, while another might view bustling activity as a sign of opportunity. The comparison also brings to light a broader theme in political discourse, the tendency to frame progress through contrast. By describing one place in glowing terms and another in negative language, a speaker can create a powerful narrative of success versus failure. Communication experts often describe this technique as comparative framing. It allows the speaker to strengthen their argument by placing two images side by side, one representing what they consider progress, and the other representing what they consider stagnation. In the statement presented here, Albia State becomes the symbol of possibility, while other states are portrayed as examples of what happens when governance does not meet expectations. Another key element in the statement is the discussion of electricity, particularly the claim of 24/7 light. Reliable electricity is one of the most important infrastructure indicators in any modern economy. Continuous electricity supply affects manufacturing productivity, digital connectivity, healthcare services, educational institutions, and household comfort. In many developing economies, inconsistent electricity supply can create significant obstacles for small businesses and entrepreneurs. Therefore, when someone highlights constant power supply as evidence of development, they are pointing to an issue that has real economic implications. However, verifying such claims requires data from energy distribution networks, generation capacity reports, and independent assessments of supply reliability. The speaker also introduces an argument about governance and financial management, suggesting that public funds should be used directly to serve citizens. This reflects a broader philosophical debate about how governments allocate resources. Some policymakers prioritize large infrastructure projects such as highways, bridges, and urban developments. Others emphasize social programs like education funding, healthcare access, and direct economic support for communities. Both approaches aim to improve living conditions, but they represent different strategies for achieving long-term development. The statement implies that previous leadership may not have used resources effectively during an 8-year period, and that future leadership should focus more directly on serving the people. Political rhetoric often includes references to timelines, promises, and visions of the future. The mention of a distant year such as 2039 illustrates how leaders and commentators sometimes frame development as a long-term journey. Urban transformation rarely happens overnight. Major cities that are admired today typically went through decades of planning, investment, experimentation, and adaptation. Dubai itself, frequently cited as an example of rapid development, underwent several phases of transformation involving strategic economic diversification, global trade integration, tourism expansion, and heavy infrastructure investment. What makes statements like the one we are analyzing particularly interesting is how they blend emotion with aspiration. The excitement in the voice suggests pride in what the speaker perceives as visible progress. Pride can be a powerful motivator in public discourse. When communities believe that their region is improving, that belief can encourage further investment, civic participation, and innovation. At the same time, analysts must separate emotional enthusiasm from empirical evaluation. Genuine development requires consistent policy implementation, transparent governance, and inclusive economic growth. Another layer of the statement touches on public frustration with infrastructure challenges in certain areas. References to bad roads, scattered development, and disorganized markets reflect concerns that many citizens express worldwide. Urban management is one of the most complicated tasks governments face. Maintaining roads alone involves constant budgeting for construction, maintenance, drainage systems, and traffic planning. Markets require sanitation management, zoning regulations, security coordination, and waste disposal infrastructure. When any of these systems fall short, residents feel the impact immediately. Interestingly, the speaker also emphasizes environmental calm and cleanliness. Environmental quality has become an increasingly important dimension of development discussions. Cities today compete not only in terms of economic productivity but also in terms of livability. Factors such as air quality, green spaces, waste management, and water sanitation all contribute to the overall experience of urban life. A city that successfully maintains a clean and peaceful environment can attract tourism, investment, and new residents seeking better living conditions. While the statement is passionate, it also illustrates how personal observation can shape public narratives. When someone visits a particular area and sees modern street lighting, wide roads, or well-organized public spaces, those images can leave a lasting impression. In contrast, encountering traffic congestion, crowded markets, or deteriorating infrastructure elsewhere can lead to strong negative comparisons. Human perception naturally relies on these visual cues to form judgments about entire regions. However, comprehensive analysis requires a broader perspective. Development economists typically rely on measurable indicators such as GDP contribution, employment rates, infrastructure coverage, health outcomes, and educational attainment. Urban planners examine zoning regulations, transportation networks, housing availability, and environmental sustainability. Sociologists look at inequality levels, community participation, and social cohesion. All these dimensions together form a more complete picture of what development actually means. At this point in the conversation, it is also worth reflecting on the role of citizen voices in shaping governance debates. Statements like the one we are analyzing often emerge from everyday conversations, interviews, or spontaneous public commentary. They represent how people interpret their surroundings and evaluate leadership performance. In democratic societies, such expressions are part of the broader public dialogue that influences policy discussions. When citizens compare different regions and express their preferences, they contribute to a culture of accountability. If you are finding this analysis insightful, this is a great moment to gently tap the subscribe button and join the growing community engaging in thoughtful conversations about development, governance, and global comparisons. Your comments are also incredibly valuable because they bring additional perspectives that enrich the discussion. Continuing with the analysis, the comparison with international cities highlights an important psychological phenomenon known as aspirational benchmarking. Communities often measure their progress by comparing themselves with places that symbolize success or modernity. These comparisons can inspire ambitious development goals. However, they can also oversimplify complex realities. Cities like Dubai benefit from unique historical, geographic, and economic factors, including strategic positioning in global trade routes, strong investment inflows, and long-term infrastructure planning supported by substantial financial resources. For regions seeking to emulate such models, the challenge lies in adapting strategies to local conditions rather than simply copying visible features. For example, building impressive roads or installing bright street lighting is valuable, but sustainable development also requires institutional strength, transparent governance systems, and policies that support local entrepreneurship. Another dimension of the statement is its implicit critique of leadership cycles. The reference to 8 years suggests dissatisfaction with a particular period of governance. Political analysts often study how leadership transitions influence development trajectories. Sometimes progress accelerates when new policies introduce reforms, improved management practices, or fresh investment priorities. In other cases, structural challenges persist regardless of leadership changes because deeper institutional reforms are required. When analyzing statements like this, it is also important to remember that development perceptions can vary significantly across different neighborhoods within the same city or state. A visitor might see a newly developed district with modern roads and bright lights, while residents in other districts might still face challenges related to infrastructure, sanitation, or economic opportunities. Urban development is rarely uniform. It tends to progress unevenly across different areas. The mention of markets in the statement provides another fascinating entry point for discussion. Markets in African cities often serve as economic lifelines where informal and formal trade intersect. These spaces are not only commercial centers but also social hubs where communities interact daily. Improving market infrastructure can significantly enhance economic productivity. Organized stores, proper sanitation facilities, waste management systems, and accessible transportation routes all contribute to better trading environments. At the same time, the vitality of markets often depends on their density and activity levels. A crowded market may appear chaotic to an outsider, yet it may represent a thriving ecosystem of small businesses supporting thousands of families. Development strategies must therefore balance organization with the preservation of economic dynamism. The speaker's tone suggests a strong belief that the state they are praising has already achieved a remarkable transformation. Whether or not this perception aligns with measurable indicators, the enthusiasm itself is noteworthy. Positive narratives about development can encourage civic pride and collective ambition. When communities believe improvement is possible, they may become more engaged in supporting policies that promote sustainable growth. As we continue examining this statement, the broader lesson becomes clear: development narratives are rarely just about infrastructure or economics. They are also about identity, aspiration, and the stories communities tell about themselves. These narratives influence how people view their leaders, their neighbors, and their future possibilities. And as we keep exploring this topic together, feel free to share your own observations in the comments. Have you ever visited a place that surprised you with its level of development compared to what you expected? Conversations like this become richer when multiple viewpoints come together.